Get ready, folks, because today we're diving deep,
Deep.
deep into the world of Bitcoin.
It's going to be a good one.
It is going to be a good one, and we're going all the way back to the source.
To the OG.
Yeah, the OG, the original white paper.
Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system.
By the one and only,
The mysterious.
the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto.
We still don't know who it is.
Nope. Published all the way back in 2008.
Can you believe that was 2008?
I know, it feels like a lifetime ago, but this paper, it was groundbreaking.
Oh, absolutely groundbreaking, a landmark document.
It really was, because back then nobody was talking about decentralized digital currency.
It was unheard of, really.
Yeah, so what Satoshi proposed was this system where you could send money to anybody, anywhere,
Anywhere in the world.
in the world without needing a bank.
Or any intermediary, no third party.
Yeah, cut out the middleman completely, and it was such a huge deal because even today, think about how we do online payments.
We still rely on those third parties.
All the time.
Like banks.
Yep, and that comes with fees and delays.
Oh, and don't forget the risk of fraud.
Oh, yeah, and even censorship.
Right, it's not a perfect system.
It's not ideal
Not at all. And that's exactly what Bitcoin was designed to solve.
to get rid of those problems.
Yep, get rid of the middleman entirely.
So no more banks.
In an ideal world, right?
In a Bitcoin world, right? But how do you even start to create a digital currency that works without someone in charge?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's where the blockchain comes in.
Okay, the blockchain, I hear that word everywhere, but I'm still not quite sure I understand it.
So the blockchain, it's the foundation of Bitcoin. It's like a public ledger.
A ledger, like a record book.
Exactly, a giant digital record book that keeps track of every Bitcoin transaction ever made.
So every time someone sends Bitcoin, it gets recorded on this blockchain.
Every single transaction from the very beginning.
Wow, so that's a lot of data.
It is a lot, but it's all public and transparent. Anyone can view it.
So how does that work in practice? I mean, how do these transactions get added to the block?
Right, so imagine the blockchain as a chain of blocks.
Okay, a chain of blocks.
And each block contains a set of transactions.
Transactions grouped together.
Right, like bundles of transactions, and these blocks are linked together.
Like a chain.
Exactly in chronological order.
So the newest block gets added to the end of the chain?
Yep, and each block is cryptographically secured.
Cryptographically secured. Now, that sounds complicated.
It does sound technical, but all it really means is each block is linked to the one before mathematically.
Mathematically, like they're all connected.
Right, so if you try to tamper with one block,
It would mess up the whole chain.
exactly, it would be obvious as something was wrong.
So that's what makes Bitcoin so secure.
That's a big part of it. The cryptography and this immutable record of transactions.
Immutable meaning it can't be changed.
Precisely. It's like a permanent record set in digital stone,
So, okay, we've got these blocks of transactions all chained together.
securely chained together.
But how do they actually get added to the blockchain? I've heard about this process called mining. What is that all about?
Mining is how new blocks are added to the blockchain. And it's a fascinating process. Think of it like a giant decentralized Sudoku puzzle.
Okay, a Sudoku puzzle.
Yeah, a really, really difficult one that everyone is trying to solve at the same time.
Okay, so miners are like Sudoku solvers.
In a way, yes. They're constantly competing to solve complex mathematical problems.
So these mathematical problems are like the Sudoku puzzles.
Exactly. And the first miner to solve the problem,
They get to add their block of transactions to the blockchain.
bingo, they win the race and they get a reward.
A reward.
Bitcoin, of course.
So it's like they get paid in Bitcoin for solving these puzzles.
That's a great way to put it. The reward incentivizes miners to keep the network secure and running smoothly.
It's like a built-in reward system.
Exactly. And this whole process is what the white paper refers to as proof of work.
Proof of work. So the miners are proving they've done the work to solve the puzzle.
Precisely. And this proof of work is what makes Bitcoin so difficult to attack.
Because to manipulate the blockchain, you'd have to control a majority of the mining power.
You need a huge amount of computing power to outcompete all the other miners.
So it's like a security measure built into the system.
Exactly. The more miners there are, the more decentralized the network becomes, and the more secure it is.
That makes sense. So even if some miners go offline, the network keeps running.
That's right. The network is designed to be resilient. It can handle some nodes dropping out.
And the white paper talks about this, right?
It does. It emphasizes that as long as honest nodes control most of the computing power, the system stays secure.
Honest nodes meaning miners who are following the rules.
Exactly. The system is built on this idea of a majority consensus.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've got the blockchain, the blocks, the miners, the proof of work.
That's a lot to take in, I know.
It is, but it's starting to make sense now. But what about this double spending problem I've heard about. Couldn't someone just copy their Bitcoin and spend it twice?
That's a great question, and it's something that any digital currency has to address because think about it, copying a digital file is easy.
Super easy. You can send the same photo to a million people.
Exactly, but with physical cash.
You can't spend the same dollar bill twice.
Right, so how do you prevent that from happening with digital currency?
Yeah, how do you make sure someone can't spend the same Bitcoin twice?
That's where the blockchain comes in. Again, that public record of every transaction makes it virtually impossible to double spend Bitcoin without everyone knowing.
So it's like a safety net
Exactly. It ensures the integrity of the system.
because everyone can see where the Bitcoin has been.
Precisely every transaction is recorded and verified by the network.
So the blockchain prevents double spending.
It's the key to making Bitcoin a viable currency.
Okay, so the blockchain prevents double spending. But if every transaction is public, doesn't that raise privacy concerns?
Ah, that's a good point. It's a common misconception that Bitcoin is completely anonymous.
So it's not totally private.
Not exactly transactions are public, yes. You can see that Bitcoin was sent from one address to another.
But you don't know who those addresses belong to.
Right, that's the key difference.
Yeah.
Bitcoin addresses aren't directly linked to your real-world identity.
So it's like a pseudonym for your financial activity?
Precisely. You can see the money moving, but you don't know who's behind it.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's more anonymous than traditional banking, where your name is on every transaction.
Exactly. And there are even ways to enhance your privacy further, like using a new Bitcoin address for each transaction.
So you could generate a brand new address every time you make a purchase.
That's right. It makes it much harder to track your spending patterns.
So there are ways to keep your Bitcoin activity private if you choose to.
Absolutely. But what's really interesting is that you don't even need to download the entire blockchain to verify transactions.
Wait, really? How is that possible? The blockchain is massive.
It is, but thanks to a clever system called Merkle trees, you can verify transactions without running a full node.
Merkle trees, now that sounds like something out of a Tolkien novel.
It does sound fantastical, but it's a real cryptographic tool that enables what's called simplified payment verification.
Simplified payment verification, so I don't have to be a cryptography expert to know that my Bitcoin transactions are legitimate.
Exactly. The white paper goes into the technical details, but essentially it allows you to trust the system without having to understand all the complexities.
That's good to know because I'm not planning on getting a PhD in cryptography anytime soon.
You don't have to. And the white paper also explains how you can combine and split value with Bitcoin transactions.
Combine and split, what does that mean?
Let's say you have one Bitcoin and you want to buy something that costs half a Bitcoin.
Okay,
You can split that one Bitcoin into two outputs.
like making change.
Exactly. One output for the purchase and one for the change you get back.
So you can make change with Bitcoin.
Precisely. And you can also combine multiple smaller amounts of Bitcoin into a single larger payment.
So transactions can have multiple inputs and outputs.
That's right. It makes the system very flexible.
It's like digital cash that you can break down or combine.
A great analogy. It's all about making the system as user-friendly as possible. And then there's another key aspect of this system, the incentives that keep it all running.
Okay, the incentives, tell me more about that.
So we talked about miners getting rewarded with Bitcoin for adding blocks to the blockchain.
The block reward.
Exactly. That's how new Bitcoin is created. It's built into the system.
So new Bitcoin is constantly being generated through mining.
Yes. But at a controlled rate, the white paper lays out a system where the block reward decreases over time.
Decreases over time, so it's not like miners are just printing free Bitcoin forever.
No, it's a carefully designed system that eventually reaches a point where no new Bitcoin is created.
So there's a limited supply of Bitcoin?
That's right. It's one of the things that makes it so valuable it's scarce.
But what motivates miners to keep the network running once the block reward dries up?
That's where transaction fees come in. Remember how we talked about transactions having multiple inputs and outputs?
Right.
Well, if the total value of the outputs is less than the total value of the inputs, the difference is added to the block as a transaction fee.
Okay, so it's like a tip for the miner.
Exactly. And miners are encouraged to include transactions with higher fees in their blocks because they make more money that way.
So it's a competitive market for transaction fees.
Precisely. It ensures that miners are still compensated for their work
That's
even after the block reward is gone.
It's a really ingenious system.
It is. It's a self-sustaining ecosystem, all without a central authority calling the shots.
That's pretty amazing, but why should I care about any of this? How does Bitcoin actually benefit me?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's one that we'll delve into much deeper in our next part when we explore the implications of a system that doesn't rely on trust and what it could mean for you.
Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We were just talking about those amazing incentives that keep miners on the Bitcoin network working hard.
It's pretty cool when you think about it. No central bank, no government, just math and code keeping it all running.
It really is a self-sustaining system. But you know what I keep thinking about?
What's that?
Privacy. Like we said, transactions are public. Anyone can see them.
Right. But they only see the Bitcoin addresses, not your name or any personal info.
So it's more anonymous than my bank account?
Exactly. Way more anonymous, and you can even take it a step further.
Like how?
The white paper suggests using a brand new address for each transaction.
So every time I buy a coffee, I generate a new address.
Basically like a one-time code for your money.
That's smart. So if I wanted to be super private,
Absolutely. Makes it much harder to track you.
unless I'm buying Bitcoin through an exchange that wants my ID.
Oh, yeah. There's always a catch, right?
It's a trade-off, but even with that, it's still more private than traditional banking, right?
Definitely way more private.
Hmm.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about security, because how do we know that Bitcoin transactions are actually safe? Well, Satoshi was way ahead of the curve on this. They laid out the math behind Bitcoin security in the white paper.
Oh boy.
Don't worry, it's not that complicated. Basically, imagine someone trying to create a fake version of the blockchain.
Like a hacker trying to rewrite history.
Exactly. To do that, they'd have to create a longer chain of blocks than the real one.
So they'd have to outmine the entire network.
And the white paper shows mathematically that the longer the blockchain grows, the harder that becomes.
So the more transactions that happen, the more secure the network gets.
Precisely. That's why you hear about confirmations in Bitcoin.
Confirmations, what are those?
Each new block added to the blockchain is a confirmation of your transaction. The more confirmations you have, the more secure your transaction is.
So if I get a Bitcoin payment, I should wait for a few confirmations before I assume it's really final.
Yeah, that's good practice. The white paper suggests 6 confirmations is generally enough to be safe.
Got it. 6 confirmations. This whole system is seriously impressive.
It is. It's built like a digital fortress. Remember that powerful line from the white paper?
Which one?
We have proposed a system for electronic transactions without relying on trust.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. But what does it really mean, no trust?
That's the question, isn't it? It goes way beyond the technical stuff. We're talking potential societal shifts here.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What could a world without traditional trust look like?
Imagine sending money across borders without needing a bank. Instant transfers, minimal fees.
That would be huge, especially for people who don't have access to traditional banking.
Exactly. It could level the playing field, financially empower individuals in a whole new way.
But wouldn't that be scary too? No bank to call if something goes wrong?
That's a valid point. There's no central authority with Bitcoin. You're responsible for your own security.
So more freedom, more control, but also more responsibility.
Exactly. That's why education is so important in the Bitcoin world.
Gotta do your homework.
You got it. This is all pretty mind-blowing stuff, isn't it?
It is. It feels like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with Bitcoin.
We are. It's a deep rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But the core principles are pretty simple. Decentralization, transparency, security, and incentives.
And those incentives are what make it all work.
They're the engine of the system. So where do we go from here? What's next for Bitcoin and this whole blockchain thing? That's the exciting part. We're still in the early days of this revolution, and the possibilities go way beyond digital currency.
Okay, like what? Give me some examples.
Secure voting systems. Imagine that every vote immutably recorded on the blockchain, no more questions about election integrity.
That would be a game changer. What else?
Supply chains, imagine tracking a product's entire journey from raw materials to your doorstep on the blockchain,
So I'd know exactly where my coffee beans came from.
and how they were produced, full transparency.
That's amazing. What else?
Digital identity, imagine controlling your own data with a secure, decentralized system on the blockchain.
So like a digital passport for the 21st century.
Exactly. You could choose what information you share and with whom.
This is seriously blowing my mind.
And it gets even crazier. Think about governance. New forms of decentralized governance, where communities make decisions collectively on the blockchain.
So it could change how we govern ourselves.
It's a potential paradigm shift in how we organize society.
I'm starting to see how this could impact literally every aspect of our lives.
It's like the internet all over again, a whole new world opening up.
This is incredibly exciting, but I gotta admit, it's also a bit overwhelming.
I get it, it's a big mental leap, but remember those core principles: decentralization, transparency, security, and incentives.
Those are the keys to understanding this new world.
Exactly. We're moving towards a world where trust isn't based on institutions, but on the technology itself.
Trust built on math and code.
That's right. It's a fundamental shift, and it all started with this white paper.
The Bitcoin white paper, a blueprint for a new future.
It's more than just a technical document. It's a call to action, an invitation to reimagine the world.
So what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from our deep dive today?
I hope they come away with a sense of wonder and possibility. The world is changing fast, and technologies like Bitcoin are leading the charge.
It's not just about money, it's about rethinking power trust and how we interact with each other.
Exactly. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Bitcoin white paper.
It's been a wild ride.
If you're feeling inspired, I highly recommend reading the full white paper yourself. It's surprisingly accessible.
And there are tons of other resources out there too. Podcasts, articles, videos, you name it.
The information is out there, so keep exploring, keep learning, and stay curious.
The future is being built right now, and you can be a part of it.
The world of Bitcoin is waiting to be explored.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We've been on quite the journey exploring this Bitcoin white paper. It's amazing how much this one document has sparked.
Yeah, it's crazy to think it all started with this, this is the seed that grew into this massive world of crypto and blockchain.
And you were saying this blockchain, it could impact way more than just money, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about something like voting.
Voting.
Imagine a system where every vote is recorded on a blockchain.
Like a digital ballot box?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But way more secure because it's tamper-proof.
So no more hanging chads, no more questions about who really won.
Exactly. Everyone could verify their vote was counted accurately.
That's amazing. What else? What other areas could blockchain disrupt?
Supply chains are another big one.
Supply chains.
Yeah, think about it. You could track every step of a product's journey on the blockchain, from the raw materials to the factory to the store,
So I could see exactly where my coffee beans came from.
and how they were grown, whether they were fair trade, organic, the whole story.
Wow, that would be a game changer for transparency and accountability.
Right. Consumers would have so much more power to make informed choices.
And companies would be held to a higher standard.
Exactly. No more hiding behind shady practices.
Right, Kaya, my mind is officially blown. This is incredible. What other possibilities are we talking about?
Let's talk about digital identity.
Okay, digital identity.
Right now, all our personal information is scattered across the internet, right? It's vulnerable to hacks and breaches and misuse.
Yeah, that's a mess.
Exactly. But blockchain could offer a way to manage our identities securely and in a decentralized way.
So we could have more control over our own data.
Exactly. You'd be in the driver's seat. You'd choose what information to share and with whom.
That sounds like a much better system than what we have now.
And it's not just about individual empowerment. Think about the implications for governance.
Governance, like how we run things.
Exactly. Blockchain could enable new forms of decentralized governance where communities make decisions collectively and transparently.
So more direct democracy.
In a way, yeah, it could cut out a lot of the bureaucracy and middlemen.
Wow, this is all so exciting. But to be honest, it's also a little overwhelming.
I get it. It's a paradigm shift. It challenges a lot of our assumptions about how the world works.
Yeah, it's a lot to process, but
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how these core principles of blockchain decentralization, transparency, security, and incentives,
Those are the building blocks of this new world.
they're the keys to understanding this whole thing.
And they point towards a world where trust isn't based on institutions or authorities, but on the technology itself.
Trust built on math and code.
Precisely. It's a radical idea, but that's what makes it so revolutionary.
We're talking about a fundamental shift in how we organize society.
It's a potential paradigm shift. And the Bitcoin white paper, it laid the groundwork for all of this.
It's more than just a technical document. It's a vision for a different future.
And it's an invitation to participate, to be a part of building this new world.
So if there's one thing you want our listeners to take away from our deep dive today, what would it be?
I want them to feel that sense of wonder and possibility. The world is changing fast, and this technology, it has the potential to change everything.
It's not just about money. It's about rethinking power trust and how we interact with each other.
Exactly. So keep exploring, keep learning, and stay curious, because this is just the beginning.
This is the frontier, and we're all pioneers.
And the Bitcoin white paper, it's our guidebook.
It's been an incredible journey exploring this with you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Bitcoin.
It's been a pleasure. And remember, the future's being built right now, and you can be a part of it.
The world of Bitcoin is waiting to be explored.